Hey, welcome back. I'm Melissa Muir. In this video, I'm going to talk about Foredom's newest edition of tools, and this is a magnetic pin finisher. So let's jump in really quickly and see what it includes, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how it works. First off, it's going to come with two containers. You'll notice that they're clear. The thing that's kind of cool about pin finishers on something like this, I've had a number of them that I've worked with that have like square containers and whatever else, but inside of this one you can kind of see it has different facets, and that's going to help the media and your pieces as they move around in there. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. Now this comes with two of them. Why two? Well, a number of reasons. That also comes with two different sizes of pins. All right, and these are going to be, they look like little needles with flat ends on them. Now they come in a 0.5 millimeter as well as a 0.3 millimeter. Now the 0.3 millimeter already is in this container here. So why would you need the difference? The larger pins are going to be really good for tumbling or polishing harder items like stainless steel. And then anything that's like the precious metals that I work with, I'm going to want to use those 0.3 millimeter pins, that little smaller pin. It's going to leave a little better surface on there for me. Now, in addition to our two containers, we also have the base itself. Now the base is what's got the magnet inside of this that's going to turn and then affect all of the pins or that steel media that we're using. It also has the timer. So, and then our power button is here. Now, in addition, it's also going to come with a cleaning solution. This is a citric acid, and it has a basket. Now, the basket is for pin sorting, and you can do a number of other things with this as well. Now, one of the things that I use the two containers for is for helping to swap when I'm trying to pick out my pieces from the one that has all the media in it. And then I can catch everything in this one and without worry of things going down my drain in the sink. Each of the containers are labeled, so it has a minimum and a fill line and a maximum. Now the pins come in packs of 150 grams. Well, the maximum of our container with pins is going to be 200 grams. So that means that I have about 50 grams to work with in adding my pieces here. So to give you an example, I have two rings here. Now the first ring is this guy right here, and this one has already been tumbled, and you can kind of see the finish on it compared to the second ring. Now the second ring has been sitting around. It's just a casting, so I haven't even cleaned off the sprue yet. So that's kind of tells you where I'm at in the process of this. Well, this one looked even worse than the one with the heart here, and I'm going to go ahead and tumble finish this. The other thing I want you to notice is the finish on this piece. Now you can kind of see here that we have some reflection. However, it is a matte finish. So whenever we do this kind of pin finishing, we're not going to get that really bright burnished finish that we might get, say, from a mixed media in a rotary tumbler. So this is a little bit different. The thing I like about it though is that it's going to remove a lot of tarnish, it's going to help smooth out my surface, and it's going to make things a little brighter. And you can see that this is definitely brighter than this ring here. Now that I've put it in the finisher for a few minutes, you can see how much brighter the heart is. So another place that this really shines is going to be where you have little tiny details. So this is going to get into each of these little areas really well because these pins are so small that it can fit into those areas. Now, when I have something that has a lot of detail similar to this, that can also be something that creates a lot of fun cleanup for me afterwards, because the pins can then work their way into some of the weaving that I have in this bracelet, and then we have to go through and pick those out. So you'll want to kind of look at your pieces and see what kind of obstacles you might have if you tumble this, and that will help you determine whether or not you should actually put it into there. Now, another thing that I like is if I have a ring that has a crown on it if I polish this, it will also get into those little areas inside of that crown. When working with pieces with stones, you want to make certain that the stone can handle that. If you have any question at all whether or not a stone can handle being tumbled or pin finished, then don't do it at all. Wait until you actually have the whole finish completely done before you set these stones. Now in the case of this pendant, I am going to tumble this. It does have a little bit of oxidation and tarnish on it, and I'm going to take that and put it in there. This one happens to be a labradorite with some CZs, and I know that those are hard enough stones that it will be able to handle that tumbling process just fine. Where I might want to be really careful is anytime I have any of these bright finishes from engraving. This is definitely not a piece that I would want to put into the pin finisher, even though it has some different tarnishing going on within those cuts. That is going to ruin that bright finish that I have now. So this one might be a better bet to put into a rotary tumbler with a larger mixed size media in stainless steel. If I have a piece that I want to have a nice smooth glossy finish, pin finisher would not be appropriate for this piece. This one would be one that if I'm going to tumble, I'm going to put this into a rotary tumbler with other media. So if ever I wonder like how much I'm going to be putting in here, because remember I already have 150 grams of my pins, so that means I can only add 50 more grams of jewelry. So let's take this bracelet for instance. This is 32.2. Well, maybe I also want to tumble something like the filigree piece. So I can add that. And now I'm at about 37.7. And I can continue to add pieces until I'm at about 50. So here I'm at about 53, so I'm going to remove one, maybe add something else like this little ring, maybe another ring. And now I'm at about 42, so that's fine. I'm going to place each of my pieces in here, and it doesn't matter where you put them, because what's going to happen is once we turn this on, everything is going to begin to move around. Now I learned also, you definitely want to have your lid on for this, because it does splash out just a little bit, or kind of an off misting. Now, one other thing that I like to do is use some kind of a lubricant. Now, just like we do in the studio a lot, you can use a little bit of liquid soap, you know, the blue stuff. And you only need just a drop or two of that. So I'm just going to put in here, and that's a little more than I really wanted. And I'm gonna watch this baby suds up. So I put in like just a couple of drops is all that needed. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the power button. Notice that it did not start, and that's because I didn't turn on the timer. Once I turn on this timer, I can walk away from my piece and let it tumble. And we've got all the way up to 120 minutes, which is going to be 2 hours. Really, most of my pieces are done anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll just turn this on. We've got a little notch here that's going to tell us how much time we have left. So here you start to see that centrifugal motion that's happening. You're also seeing some of those suds develop from that lubricant that I put into there. And the longer you let this go, the better the finish is going to be on your pieces. So it's been about 5 minutes now. So let's just kind of look and see what we're left with. So I'll just turn that. You hear that ding that tells us that it's finished. Once we're done tumbling this, we need to now separate our pieces. Well, this is where that second container and that little basket comes in kind of handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tumbler that I just used, or that container, and I'm going to dump everything I have into this other basket. All right, from there, I'm going to take this and leave the water and the pins still inside of this basket. I'm going to place it back onto the base, and now I'm going to run this. I want to put the lid back on this top because as we get going on this, that centrifugal motion can actually cause some of those pins to jump out. So doing this, now what it's going to happen is it's going to move that water and pull all of those pins back out from my pieces, and it's going to then separate everything so that the pins are no longer in my pieces here. Now I can more easily get to my pieces without having to sort through all the pins. So I said that if you have something like this, we end up getting sometimes little pins that are stuck in here. And this one is definitely filled with little pins. So I don't know if you can see these right here, but they are definitely there. So those are going to need to either be picked out by hand with tweezers, with pliers, something like that, to pull out each of these little pins that get stuck into that wire weaving. On this ring here, I actually have some pins that are stuck in underneath the head as well. Those are going to wash right out with maybe some rinse water or something like that, but it's something that you should be aware of. Another thing to note is that as this does this, this water is going to get very warm. So things are going to heat up, and not anything to worry about, but something that you should be aware of when you go to reach in. So as you can see, it's kind of fun to use. Like I said, it does give you a matte finish. So if you're looking for that high polished burnished look, you're not going to get that from here. However, the one thing I really like is that my surface is pretty even, especially if I leave this in for like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, something like that. And then I can hit it on the polishing buff with like a cotton buff and a little bit of polishing compound to get that better finish that I'm after. So it does leave me with a pre-finish. However, there are times where I want just that lovely smooth matte finish. Now, because of the way those pins are going to work, that matte finish is going to be over the surface of your entire piece. So sometimes what I will do is leave most of it matte, and then I'll come back and burnish or polish certain areas to really make those areas pop. As always, if you have any questions, be sure to pop those down in the comment section. Make sure that you subscribe, ring that bell, and mark that you want all notifications so that you don't miss any of the other videos. Now, join me in the next video where I'm going to do a comparison between a pin finisher and the rotary tumbler and looking at the difference there. We'll see you guys next time.